In particular, because I can go back to 2014 when I would be on Rachel's show as a correspondent at curfew time in Baltimore when I was covering the Freddie Gray uprisings. And these were mass marches that were in regard to police taking Freddie Gray's body and treating it like a rag doll and flinging him into the back of a police van and then riding around with him unshackled in that van until the rag doll broke and he died. And he died alone in the back of a car being brutalized for no reason other than making eye contact with police as he rode his bike. And the uprisings that took place after Freddie Gray brought in a level of policing that I've never witnessed ever in life. It looked like a war zone. Police brought in tanks. They brought in body armor. They were wearing full body armor rubber suits where they almost looked robotic, full gear, enormous, powerful weaponry, and they were phalanx out all across Baltimore, Penn and North. They were standing menacingly waiting to brutalize anyone who even looked at them funny. The level of force, the level of just almost indiscriminate rudeness, cruelty, hardness of those police officers, and at curfew time, which would be 9 o'clock, and then almost every night during that uprising, at some point I would go on with you, Rachel, and describe to you what I was seeing, and it was terrifying. And what terrified me in those moments in Baltimore were not the marchers. I was never afraid among the marchers. The marchers just wanted justice. They just didn't think it was okay to just kill a guy because he looked at the police funny. I wasn't afraid of them. I was afraid of the cops because they were menacing. They knew those marchers were coming every night. They knew there was going to be a curfew every night. The great Elijah Cummings would walk people home and get them to go home because he didn't want them out after curfew. But there would always be some guys who would stay out after the curfew, who would refuse to go home, who would claim the right to be in their streets. And I was never afraid of them. I was afraid of the cops. The reason, as Claire talked about, that these people were so unafraid of the cops, who were sparsely distributed through our capital, which hasn't been breached since 1812, when it was burned. The reason they could easily and casually, with their cameras on, film themselves throwing things through the walls of our capital, our property, going inside the Capitol, sitting in Speaker Pelosi's office, casually take pictures of themselves, have that played on Fox News, they know that they are not in jeopardy. Because the cops are taking selfies with them, walking them down the steps to make sure they're not hurt, taking care with their bodies, not like they treated Freddie Gray's body. White Americans aren't afraid of the cops. White Americans are never afraid of the cops, even when they're committing insurrection, even when they're engaged in attempting to occupy our capital, to steal the votes of people who look like me. Because in their minds, they own this country, they own that capital, they own the cops work for them, and people like me have no damn right to try to elect a president. Because we don't get to pick the president, they get to pick the president. They own the president, they own the White House, they own this country. And so when you think you own it, you own the place, you ain't afraid of the police because the police are you, and the police reflect back to them. We're with you. You're good. We're not going to hurt you because you're not them. Guarantee you, if that was a Black Lives Matter protest in D.C., there would already be people shackled, arrested, or dead. Shackled, arrested, en masse, or dead. Get a Brittany Packnett Cunningham on here. She'll tell you how they treated her in Ferguson. Put Alicia Garza on here. She'll tell you how they treated her at every Black Lives Matter march. Get Patrisse Cullors on. They'll tell you what it feels like to protest peacefully and unarmed and have how the police will treat you if you're black. That's it. They're not afraid of the cops because they know the cops are cool with it.
It's a stunning vacuum of information we have, and without any other explanations, it's certainly the most logical one. Joy, we have spoken to members of Congress hiding in their offices. They are scenes reminiscent of the kinds of events that we've all covered, the worst days that we ever have on our jobs, covering mass shootings or tragedies where people call us from places where they're hiding because they fear for their lives. What do you make of what everything has brought us to today?
I mean, I don't understand how Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley have not yet resigned. They're fundraising, tweeting out fundraisers. During this, you had Josh Hawley with that infamous photo that Brian showed earlier with his fist raised as if he's some sort of freedom fighter out there with this mob. You know, and by the way that we in the media speak about this is so important. This is a riot at minimum. It's insurrection, as the president-elect has called it. You know, people don't want to call it a coup, but what else is it if you're trying to replace the duly elected president of the United States with your choice because you don't like that you lost and you think you own the country? I don't know what else you call that if that's not domestic terrorism, a coup, call it whatever you want. But the elected officials who had a job today that's in the Constitution that they were supposed to do to officially and ceremonially install the new president to show that we believe in this peaceful transfer of power, we're completely thrown over today. Josh Hawley should resign in ignominy. It is absolutely ignominious what he did, sparking this. Ted Cruz as well. But honestly, Mitch McConnell too, they've all played a role. Conservative media has played a role. They've all played this game because they thought that there was no downside. Why not? And you've reported on this, Nicole, where, you know, people around the president have said, what's the harm in letting him play it out? He said in December, see you on January 6th, it's gonna be wild. That was December 19th, he tweeted that. We knew this was coming. Capitol Police knew it was coming. It was heartbreaking listening to this congresswoman talk about making her husband do what her will was. Everyone knew what he was going to do. Donald Trump is a showman. He's a reality show producer. We all knew he was going to produce entertainment today for his followers because he's building his future conservative media enterprise, right? He needs to have all of these people whipped up so he can market to them. They're his marks. They're the people he's scamming. He's doing just exactly what Rupert Murdoch has done his whole career. He's creating a market for himself, for Trump Inc., for Trump Media. And they're the market, right? They're easy to sell stuff to. They'll buy hats. They'll buy, MAGA stuff. They'll buy flags. They'll buy it all. They're the marks. But what he's done now is he's essentially done, you talked about Al-Qaeda, what has he done in terms of incitement, right, that Osama bin Laden didn't do? He simply told people the way to win a war against America is that you need to be able to sacrifice your body. So these people are saying, I'm willing to die for Trump. Some of them have COVID. They're on airplanes screaming without masks on. They could be spreading a deadly disease while they're doing this. So I think what we need now is for Congress, as unsafe and terrifying as it is, to step forward and say, and it's incumbent especially on the Republicans who made this monster and who rode with him. Lindsey Graham out there tweeting, be safe and nobody be violent. You know what? Please be quiet, Lindsey Graham. You built this with the rest of them. They all need to come together and say, if we have to stay up all damn night long, we're going to certify Joe Biden as the next president of the United States. We're going to do it on Zoom. We're going to do it on the phone if we have to, but the Constitution says we're doing it. We're doing it. They need to do it.
Joy Reid with us now for the duration. She'll be back turning it over to Rachel as a special guest.
Joining us now on the phone from the Capitol complex is Democratic Congressman Ruben Gallego.